Welcome to the Baseball Insiders. Thank you for joining us. Lots happening, a lot of moving pieces, and we will try to take you through all of it as well as get to as many of your questions as we can. Happy Friday, 3:30 Eastern. The Atlanta Braves made a move. I know our Braves fans in the comments have been waiting forever. Jurickson Profar is a Braves story broken by the one and only, I don't know how to point, fan-sided MLB insider, Robert Murray. We'll also talk about the Alex Bregman rumors, Brian Presley, the Astros, the Chicago Cubs. A lot of moving pieces there. Is Ryan Presley just shooting down offers like fish in a barrel right now? Is he going to be changing teams? What's he up to? Plus, the Blue Jays were getting Pete Alonso last night. Then Ben Nicholson-Smith and Shai Davidi torpedoed in to say, not yet, not quite. Mets probably not out. Blue Jays not out, but not in. Did the Los Angeles Angels sit down with Pete Alonso? That's a rumor that broke about 10 minutes ago. We're trying to get to the bottom of it, but we will discuss what we know. And here to do it all, of course, is fan-sided MLB insider Robert Murray. First on the Profar beat.
Hey, it was good to get a scoop. I think we beat passing by about 9 seconds. So
Loser, huge loser.
It felt good to be passing for once. So we love a good competition. Passing's a great guy. So we love Jeff Passan on this podcast. But I'm excited to break it all down. I have all the Profar dope that I can give you guys. We got the scoop on how that ended up going down and who was involved. I got lots of other stuff to talk about. This is a very loaded show for a Friday afternoon. I'm excited to talk about it. Let's dive in, Adam. How are we doing? Good to be here with you on this Friday afternoon.
We are so good. It is good to be here. It is fun to dive in. Again, this is what you dream of when you put 3 shows on the schedule. You're like, I really hope Friday has huge news Thursday night, as well as swirling rumors and things that a lot of people are asking questions about heading into the weekend. So here we are, here to help, and we will be right back here Monday at 3:30 Eastern, Wednesday at 1, Friday at 3:30. We're going to try to find some time for another Q&A in the All-Star channel. But what's the All-Star channel? It's our Discord. So come join us there. Hit the join button below this video. That's how you choose your tier, Rumor Mill tier or the All-Star tier. All-Stars, where the private Q&As are. And they also get you priority in this particular chat right here. And I still don't know how to point. I'm pointing backwards. It's really hard. This is
doing a great job to me.
It feels like it's going the same way no matter what I do. I'm like looking at the screen. I can't figure out which finger I even have raised. It's a Friday. That's how you know it's a Friday. And if you don't have the moonshot too, I'd recommend getting on that. I was involved there yesterday. That's Fansided's MLB email newsletter weekly, where the Fansided baseball team, including Robert Murray and myself, will break down all the biggest stories in the big leagues with humor, insight, and behind-the-scenes info. So shout out to the moonshot. And shout out to, like we said, the one and only Robert Murray for beating Jeff Passan, helping out Braves fans everywhere who've been in our mentions forever. And following up his Braves Jeff Hoffman semi-scoop non-deal, got the Jurickson Profar news. 3 years, $42 million, a versatile addition for a team having a slumbering offseason. That's a good fit. And as I was saying to you before the show, he really does feel like a guy who we're going to look up at the calendars in May and be like, how was Jurickson Profar ever not a Brave? Like perfect fit, culture fit, roster fit, and price fit, obviously.
Yeah, at the start of the offseason, Profar said in his press conference that he identified the Braves and the Padres as the 2 teams that he really wanted to end up playing for this year. And the Braves, from the start of the offseason, were involved in this market. There was nothing close, but they maintained conversations. And at some point this offseason, Profar and Alex Anthopoulos had a Zoom meeting, and both sides came away very impressed with one another. And the Braves were optimistic that Profar's 2024 season, in which he broke out, was a sign of things to come. But they also identified him as a really good locker room fit. And that's something that is incredibly important to Alex Anthopoulos when he's building a roster. And Profar is regarded as one of the best locker room guys in baseball. And they had that conversation and they kept it going. But there was other teams that were involved, such as the Kansas City Royals, the San Diego Padres, the Houston Astros, the Toronto Blue Jays, and the New York Mets. They were all involved. And as soon as there was some movement in the free agent market this week, Profar's market heated up, and Atlanta was aggressive in getting that deal done. They ultimately signed Profar for $42 million. The other team that Profar was eyeing up was a return to the San Diego Padres. And to my knowledge, nothing was ever close there. The Braves were well ahead of the Padres in the bidding. The Padres remain looking in the outfield market, but Profar is now gone, and they have to replace him at this point.
Well, they got Ron Marinaccio, so seems like a pretty solid 1-for-1. Yeah, bummer for Padres fans. Again, we hate to continue coming onto this show and saying, the finances are tight there, but no more obvious example other than all the other examples of inactivity than this one, where the Padres and Braves are his top choices. He wants to come back to San Diego. They don't make a competitive offer. And then you see the final price tag and go, this is what we talk about when we talk about Dodgers and the rest of the league. Like, any team could compete with 3 years, $42 million. And if he wants to come back, then certainly that team can scrounge up those finances.
No, totally. $42 million for a player of Profar's caliber is, I mean, if he ends up repeating what he did last year is even better, then that's going to end up looking like a really good contract for the Braves. And he's going there, and he idolized Andrew Jones growing up. He loves playing in Atlanta, and it just seems like a really good fit all around. And we even saw his kid talk about that fit in Atlanta and how, like, as soon as he ended up finding out that the Braves were interested, he's like, Dad, let's go to Atlanta. Let's go play for the Braves. Because you look at all those star players you have on that team, it seemed like it was a fit that made so much sense for both sides. And Anthopoulos ended up getting a lot of flack this offseason for how quiet he was. But if there's one thing to know about Atlanta is they operate in silence. Like, I had no idea that Atlanta was involved in Profar until about 20 minutes before I found out that they actually signed him. That is how secretive Anthopoulos is. They're still looking for starting pitching and bullpen help at this point. Nothing is close. I think they're also looking for, I believe, an infielder as well, but nothing is close there either, to my knowledge. But Anthopoulos continues to look on the market. He's been aggressive, and he had a deal for Jeff Hoffman. I mean, obviously that physical was failed, but now he ends up getting Jurickson Profar, and that was a deal that I think made a lot of sense and was financially responsible. But also Profar, the fact that he went from $1 million last year to now $42 million, it's a job well done by him. And
it does, yeah, he does feel like this comment says, kind of a 480 type of player. The All-Star game coming up in Atlanta this summer could be a very fun time to be a Braves fan. I see a lot of different fans chirping about different questions, all of which we do plan to address so far. Also, Prison Mike, nice to see you here. Want to know what NHL shirt I have on? It's a 2024 Stadium Series Artemi Panarin Rangers jersey. The New York Rangers, hottest team in the NHL after being the worst team in the NHL for 2+ months. So had to rep today, but did throw a sweater over it so that all you could see was the NHL logo. So there you go. Happy to help. Gonna satisfy our Cubs and Red Sox and Astros questioners right now by talking about Alex Bregman and saying what we know. We don't know what we know, but hey, we ruled out a fit in Houston. And like you've said on this show many times, you left the GM meetings thinking, okay, Alex Bregman will just go back to the Astros. They're clearly on the same wavelength here. Then a stalemate, this 6-year, $156 million deal. Those are the terms we believe we know was the offer originally. They can't come to any sort of agreement there. Dana Brown then is just as clear in the wake of being clear at the GM meetings that they're interested, at the winter meeting saying we're ready to pivot, and they go get Christian Walker and they go trade Kyle Tucker for Isaac Paredes. Third base taken care of. First base taken care of. Jose Altuve at second base. That said, Altuve beat the drum for Bregman after the season ended, made it clear he wanted him back. Altuve reportedly willing to move to left field in order to accommodate a Bregman return. Bregman would then go to second like he would with the Red Sox, I guess, and Paredes would stay at third, or would they flip Paredes, who's a perfect fit for the Crawford boxes? It's wild. Either way, we got a list officially of the Bregman teams this morning, and it was everyone you'd expect. Jays are in, Red Sox are in, Tigers are in, but there are those pesky Astros, and there are the Chicago Cubs as well. So would be an awkward homecoming at this point. Optically only, though, because it does seem like the Astros want him back, and Bregman's been holding out all along. Altuve wants him back. Altuve would move. So what's the latest you're hearing on Alex Bregman as we sort of open it up, but not too far? We've sort of opened it up to the Astros, a very familiar team, and the Cubs, who are now involved.
Yeah, as Chandler Rome mentioned, the Astros, their offer that they extended Bregman earlier in the offseason remains on the table. And he's got other suitors as well. You look at the Chicago Cubs, you have the Toronto Blue Jays, the Boston Red Sox, and the Detroit Tigers. And let's break it all down real quick. Because the Astros fit, we saw Joe Espada tease it the other day that they were still involved or at least lurking in the market. And that remains on the table for sure. I don't necessarily know the likelihood there, but the fact that they're still involved and they're still open to it, that's good. I know there's been some questions about whether or not this could mean that they could regret trading Kyle Tucker, because if you bring back Bregman, like, wouldn't you want to be all in with Tucker? If the Astros re-signed Bregman, I just don't think that they had the money to re-sign Kyle Tucker, because if he ends up having a huge year this year, which I would not be surprised by it whatsoever, we're talking about a guy who's getting $3, $4, maybe $500 million. It's going to be a very expensive contract for Tucker next offseason.
MLB Network's The Shredder just put him between Juan Soto and Aaron Judge in right field. So we love The Shredder. It definitely creates conversation.
No, it totally does. It absolutely does. And if you look at it from the Cubs' perspective as well, their interest makes sense because they need some more bats. They need some infield reinforcements there in Chicago. But that being said, I think in order for Bregman to go to Chicago, they would need ownership to really allow that front office to add that kind of a paycheck to the payroll. And I'm not very optimistic that'll end up being the case. I've been surprised before, but I don't think that's necessarily the most likely thing by any means. The Tigers have been interested for the majority of the offseason, but as Evan Petzold reported, that talks have kind of been at a standstill there. The Blue Jays, it seems like they've been on every bat here. They've been on Pete Alonso. They've been on Jurickson Profar. I've heard them connected to some different names that I'm not allowed to report, unfortunately. But just know the Blue Jays are very active in the market right now. But I have not heard much. Bregman spoke with Toronto. I'll put that there for whatever that's worth. But he's a name that I have not heard too much there. And then the Red Sox, it's been the same thing all offseason. It's just they're involved, but nothing is close there as of this point. So it's a lot of just wait and see with Bregman, but at least now we have the teams and exactly who's involved in this market.
And the Red Sox sort of being in the same spot all offseason, and the Tigers being at this stalemate, like Evan Petzold mentioned, the door does seem wide open for him to maybe just return to the more comfortable location. If nothing's moving and he's been equally enthusiastic about the Red Sox and Tigers all along, I'm sort of involved. The Astros are just screaming out to me that, like, hey, this is maybe ready to be a shakeup here. And Kyle Tucker, not in the Astros' future. Framber Valdez maybe gets dislodged long-term by a move like this, but pretty good roster in place with or without Bregman for 2025. And I feel like it just makes sense to bring him on back.
No, I totally agree. It would result in some shuffling in that defensive picture, but Bregman is a great fit in Houston. He's obviously thrived there. He came up there. I wouldn't be surprised if he did return, but the thing is, like, there's no clear favorite as of this point. So I think it's too early to really peg a favorite or just to say he's going or leaning one which way, because I think it's wide open as of this point.
But the movement is occurring. Ryan Garcia brings up an interesting point too. Cubs theoretically could get out of Nico Hoerner if they traded. They could trade Hoerner if they signed Bregman. But like you said, it does feel a little bit less likely that they're able to wedge Bregman on to their payroll. I don't know if trading Hoerner would make it more or less likely, though.
No, I don't necessarily know either. And you also got to think, too, is Matt Shaw is coming up as well. And Bregman, I mean, he could obviously move defensive positions. He could play second base if he needed to. But the Cubs are going to have Matt Shaw in mind. And I don't know if they necessarily have the flexibility to add Bregman on a long-term deal. And we've seen Boris pretty adamant that he wants and anticipates Bregman getting a long-term contract. So I think the Cubs would have to blow him away with a short-term offer to get him in Chicago, because he's got a clear preference, it seems, for a long-term offer. So I get why the Cubs are interested. Again, I just don't think it's necessarily the most likely thing.
Thank you also for the questions and all the comments from all the different fan bases. We appreciate it. We're trying to synthesize all we can, which brings us to Pete Alonso, which we're trying to, Max Scherzer to an extent as well, trying to help out our Jays fans. Yesterday, all of a sudden, I think Andy Martino went on SNY and said the Jays and Pete Alonso were at the 10-yard line. Anyway, here we are almost 24 hours later. I guess they haven't called a play since that moment in time, but we are trying to figure out if the Mets Pete Alonso divorce is realer than ever or the same level of chicken being played that it's felt like for weeks. We just got a report saying that Pete met with the Angels, though we're trying to verify that, and all we know, I think, at this point is what everyone knows, that, like, hey, we saw that tweet. It was a good tweet. It's interesting. But yeah, not necessarily. I was sort of sitting here crossing my fingers that Alonso to the Jays might get done last night. We did not get that close to a resolution there. Thoughts on his market at this moment?
Yeah, yesterday was a wild day as far as Twitter reporting went, because I was hearing one thing and everyone on Twitter was saying another thing. And my understanding was that there had not been, talks were not advancing with the Blue Jays as far as Pete Alonso goes. They've had plenty of conversations there with Alonso and with Scherzer. But I was not under the impression that anything was imminent there as of last night. But the Blue Jays, they do remain involved in that. They're, as I said, they're like one of the most aggressive teams in free agency right now. And we even saw Ross Atkins say that he does not anticipate them being done. And I take him for his word. They're continuing conversations all across the board here. I'm curious to see what eventually gets across the finish line. But as of yesterday afternoon, as of last night, I did not hear of anything close between the Blue Jays and Alonso. Now, as far as the reports today about the Angels meeting, I have not been able to confirm those. I'm not kidding, probably a dozen texts before the podcast here, and I've gotten one response, but that person didn't know. But the other people, they have not gotten back to me. So I don't know what that means. We'll see. But the Alonso market, as we've seen, has been Mets, Blue Jays, Angels, and we'll see if there's any other teams that are involved in here. I'm not ruling out a Mets return by any means. Just because, as I've said all along, I still think that's like a great fit for both sides. But there's clearly interest from other teams, and we'll see if that gets the Mets to fold here, if it gets the Blue Jays to fold. But I don't think anything is imminent here as of this point.
I'm going to tease the Mariners until they get involved, but it does feel like those are the two teams, at least at the forefront, perhaps the Angels. And I was hoping for a resolution last night. Shout out to the person, though, who texted you back that they have no idea. It's a good common courtesy to at least respond to the overture saying, I don't know. Thank you, though.
No, exactly. Sorry. I've been getting a bunch of different messages. And I see by the way, I see Rory, I see your message here. I have no idea. It would not be my place to comment on that, but I genuinely have no clue where that kind of stuff came from, because I've heard pretty consistently throughout that nothing is close there.
It is Mets Fan Fest tomorrow, as this commenter notes, though. It would be pretty badass for one of the autograph stages that I think they're like randomizing for somebody's ticket to say Pete Alonso's there, and then you end up in that line. Pretty cool.
No, absolutely. Wouldn't that be something? It'd be kind of like what ended up happening when the Cubs re-signed, or they brought in Dexter Fowler, and they brought him in during spring training and surprised the team with Fowler. So that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, the old Liam Cohen, he's out, and then all of a sudden he shows up in Jacksonville with a signed contract. Everyone in Tampa's angry. So you never know. Baseball trying to steal a little bit of the NFL shine this week. Couple good questions and things that we definitely want to get to as well. I see Ryan Presley and the Cubs being brought up. There was a report last night that Presley was close to being dealt to the Cubs, then a report indicating he spiked it, which would indicate that it was done, and then a report today saying that it's not necessarily over yet, that the two sides they're unclear where Presley stands on these talks. He prefers to stay in the Midwest. The Tigers have inquired on a Presley trade, as that has come down this afternoon. According to Ken Rosenthal, quote, the Tigers are also involved in trade discussions for Presley, a league source said, but it may be unlikely for Presley to accept a deal there. According to one league source, the Astros are doing whatever they can to trade Presley. If I'm the Tigers and I want Alex Bregman, I don't help the Astros get rid of money they could use on Alex Bregman, quite frankly. That's what we call a New York Yankees. They took the Josh Donaldson money and let the Twins get Carlos Correa. But what are your thoughts on Presley? Clearly, they're trying to move him, and they've got a reason for it.
Yeah, the report surfaced yesterday that the Cubs were on the verge of acquiring Ryan Presley, and I texted somebody who would definitely know, and his response was, "What are you talking about?" Nothing was imminent there by any means. The Cubs have interest in Ryan Presley, and there are other teams that have interest in him as well. One of them that I can say is Detroit. I don't necessarily know if it is unlikely, but you have the AJ Hinch connection there. And that makes all the sense in the world for them, especially because Detroit is looking for bullpen help, and they've inquired on a number of different arms, both in trade and also in free agency. As far as the Cubs fit goes, they also have been looking for back end relief help, and they had conversations with Tanner Scott. They offered 4 years for $66 million, came in second place in that bidding. We saw Bruce Levine report that they're in talks with David Robertson. They've been talking to Ryan Presley. They've been talking to a lot of other players as well, but nothing has ever been close between the Astros and Cubs for Presley. That kind of felt like a leverage play with that getting out. So, but yeah, nothing is close there. But I can also confidently say that he is disinclined to go east or west. So that would significantly limit the number of suitors that are going to be involved here.
Ryan Presley, you're describing the only places that you can move in America, essentially. I will not go east. I will not go west. North, also a no. South, I'd consider it. Like, okay, limiting your options, man.
No, exactly. But nothing is close. But it seems like the Astros are pretty motivated to move on from Presley, which, I mean, I understand wanting to shed that salary, but we're also talking about one of your best relievers in recent memory. So that's be a tough one for me to do if I was the Astros, but it seems like that's something that they want to do. And maybe that's to free up room for Bregman, or maybe it's for another thing. I don't know. But yeah, we'll see what ends up happening here, but nothing is close as of this morning.
A couple more of your questions. Rory asking, are the Dodgers finished with big moves? He wants us to burn the comment section to the ground, I guess. I think, I don't know how many big moves are still on the table for the Los Angeles Dodgers. But yeah, maybe. I don't know. A lot of Padres people in the comments obviously want to get us to the Christian Vasquez, Dylan Cease Twins rumor swirl, which even when it was brought up, the context was the talks have died down a little bit. So it almost felt to me like one of those things you learn about after the fact, just so that people could be like, this is going on. I don't know if you guys want to read about this. But thoughts on the Padres and Twins matching up, or even a Cease trade in general right now? Like, could this get larger and somebody get involved on Cease?
Yeah, Cease is going to have a pretty huge market because, if he's available, which the Padres are listening on him, that's different from available, because you listen, teams listen on 99.999% of your players. That's just like the reality of how this goes. And that doesn't mean a player is going to get traded. It just means you're doing your job properly. But Cease is going to draw big interest. He is a player who is entering the final year of his contract, so it would be a possible rental situation, especially with his agent being Scott Boras. But I would not be surprised if he is indeed moved. I don't believe anything is like on the doorstep by any means. But what the Padres are trying to do right now is they're also trying to upgrade the catcher spot. And they obviously signed Martin Maldonado, but that was a minor league contract. And then they've had conversations with the Twins about Vasquez. I kind of heard the same thing along those lines of what Dan Hayes and Dennis Lind reported, is that they had conversations, but they weren't progressing as of that reporting time. I have not heard anything since, but I know the Padres they had conversations with some other options in free agency, but they did not line up there contractually. But we still have James McCann. We still have Yasmani Grandal. There's a couple of different options that are out there. So if they're not able to get the Vasquez trade done, they at least have some options to pivot to in free agency, but they might have to go over that $2 million mark, which has been a pretty strong threshold for them as far as catching goes.
Comment saying Cease to the Dodgers, book it. I mean, if the Padres and Dodgers hook up for a Dylan Cease trade, I think he can go ahead and fold the franchise. The fans would not show up.
No, and I also wonder too, it's like, I've spent time around Manny Machado, spent time around Fernando Tatis Jr., and I know the kind of competitors that those guys are. And they love winning. They want to win a World Series. And they were going all in when Peter Seidler was running the show there. And now they're seeing their team lose their players in free agency. They're shopping they're listening on some of these guys on their roster. And you see the Dodgers just go all in, and they're making any move that they want. I wonder what they're feeling right now. That would be, I would love to have a conversation with those guys. I don't have any insight into what they're thinking, but I can't imagine they're probably too happy as of this point. But A lot of offseason left, and if there's one thing that I have learned, it is to not rule out AJ Preller. He lurks. He knows the market better than I think any GM in baseball because he's involved in every conversation. So we'll see. But yeah, this has been a tough offseason for the Padres. A very, very, very tough offseason for the Padres.
And we want to give Padres fans good news. We will when we can. We obviously, it's not our intention to come on here and be like, hey, here's something that sucks. But if people are asking, we're trying to answer honestly. And we appreciate the questions as always. We love our Padre fans. I got a lot of Pirates questions here. Obviously, as always, we've been monitoring the Pirates in the outfield market for a while. Austin asking if the Pirates are still on Verdugo, and Grichuk, that guy, asking if the Pirates are still looking around for anyone. We've spoken recently about maybe the Pirates and the bullpen market more so than the Pirates and the outfield market, which I know is odd, but any thoughts as we sort of approach, hey, we're 3 weeks from spring training. Luckily, outfielders report about a week after pitchers and catchers, but any clarity on the Pirates' efforts to upgrade the roster?
Yeah, they are still involved in the Verdugo conversation. They're still involved in the outfield market. And as I've said numerous times in the Discord, I think we even said it in the last show, if you have a pulse and you can play in the outfield, the Pittsburgh Pirates are interested in you. They continue to look for an outfielder. They want to upgrade that unit. I don't necessarily know how they're going to do it or if they're going to be able to get Verdugo or one of the players that they're eyeing. But they are having conversations there. So they are trying the bullpen. They're still trying for that as well. According to reports, I think there was a beat writer in Pittsburgh who ended up mentioning that. So good job by them. But yeah, I wouldn't expect like an earth-shattering move by any means, but I do think Verdugo is possible.
Verdugo is possible. That's what everybody wanted, right? Well, happy to help. Anything else in your notebook today that we have not mentioned on the show?
Drew, Tatis and Machado, they're not going to be traded. I'm going to tell you that right now.
They're going to be Yankees. They'll be New York Yankees. Maybe Machado.
No, I'm going to stop at. I know Adam is trolling over there, but that is not going to happen. You don't have to worry about either of those two being traded. But
people asking, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No. I mean, just people asking in the comments about a Yankees move. I'm just trying to give them what they want. Do an obnoxious New York accent. Say that we're getting Manny Machado.
No, my God, you are not. No. But there, one thing I did report this week is that Kyle Finnegan's market has picked up. There's been a lot more phone calls there in the last 24 to 36 hours than there had previously been. When I tweeted that, I was not under the impression that anything is imminent. I have not heard anything to suggest otherwise as of this point, but the interest is definitely picking up there. And the same can be said for a lot of these different relievers as well. And also with Profar going off of the market, I would expect guys like Verdugo, like Grichuk, and some of these other guys to really have their markets pick up as well. So there could be some movement here throughout this weekend or even early next week. But yeah, that's the big boys as far as Alonso, as far as Bregman. I don't think anything is imminent there as of this point.
Appreciate, as always, the question. One final All-Star popped in. How much do the Eagles lose by on Sunday, says Brandon Rundfleisch. I've got the Eagles winning this game, and I'm an objective third party who was at the last Commanders-Eagles game in Philadelphia. It did not go well for the Commanders. Jade Daniels looked downright human, if not humble. I think he was battling an injury at that point. I would guess that an injury lingered throughout a good chunk of the middle portion of his season. So somewhat limited in that game, even if it wasn't totally public that he was battling whatever. But that said, I just feel like the Eagles are juiced up, and I don't see them losing this game on Sunday. I will not make you say the same thing, but I'm just being honest. It's not a reverse jinx. I think they're going to win.
No, I'm going to be totally honest. I'm a little nervous for this game. Jaden Daniels is legit, and the Eagles got Jalen Hurts, who's hurt, and you also got Cam Jurgens, their center, who's going in questionable. And center is a big spot for the Eagles. They like the athletic guys for pulling in screens or just in the run game in general. So I'm a little bit nervous, but if they go to the Super Bowl, I will be insufferable for 2 weeks. So I'm just going to warn you about that now. Wait, if Adam was QB of Washington and Robert was QB of Philadelphia, who wins? Eagles by a trillion.
Yeah, what are you talking about? Like, the infrastructure of the Eagles is so – Robert had the offensive line and Saquon Barkley at his disposal. And I would have Terry McLaurin angrily throwing his arms up in the air as I underthrew him as I was bull rushed by Josh Sweat 100 times in the game. So I wouldn't make it out of the first quarter, and Robert's team would win just on Saquon handoffs alone.
That's all I would do. I wouldn't throw a single pass.
Yeah, what are you talking about? I'd be Brian Robinson would be standing begging for the ball. I'd be like, dude, you're not a bell cow. You can't do this 40 times a game. McLaurin would be waving at me from the side. De'Ami Brown would be streaking open down the field the whole game. And I just have to look at him being like, I can't do this. I don't play this sport. Like, people would be so mad at me. Could you imagine like Good Morning Football or First Take after I bungled the Commanders' shot at a Super Bowl just by being completely unable to function? I mean, it would be, I'd be laughed out of the league. It'd be over for me.
No, I have more confidence in you than you do yourself, Adam. I think you'd be serviceable. You maybe be like the Ryan Fitzpatrick of quarterbacks.
If you let me replace a football with a baseball, I'd be fine. I could get a baseball down the field. Football, no chance.
I believe in you, but yeah, go Birds, baby. That's all I gotta say. I'm gonna be a nervous wreck on Sunday during that game. So anyone who's in the Discord or anyone on Twitter, if you want to give me shit during the Eagles game, be my guest, but I will not be responding to you. Go Birds.
Rory asking who my football team is. It's the stupid New York Giants. We'll see them in the playoffs in another 7 years. So for now, I just get to talk about the NFL as an outsider because right now my team's not in the NFL, so I don't really know what it feels like to care about a sporting event. But someday, maybe. Again, appreciate everyone showing up today, asking us questions. Of course, a lot to cover on a Friday show. We'll be right back Monday, 3:30 to cover it, seeing Jays fans asking stuff in the comments. Scroll back to earlier in the show. We talked a lot about the Jays and Alonso and even the Jays and Bregman a little bit. So sorry about that, but we covered the Jays earlier, and now we got to go. But we will be back on Monday talking more ball and hopefully knowing more information about a couple of key players. We still got some all-stars. Still got 1 million bullpen arms up for grabs. Still got Nolan Arenado untraded, as the comments are noting. So still got the Yankees with an infield vacancy that Manny Machado could fill beautifully. But Robert Murray, thank you for helping us out today, and good job breaking Jurickson Profar.
No, I appreciate it. Hopefully we got some more stuff in the hopper. I got nothing in the drafts as of this point. So we'll see if that changes throughout the day and throughout the weekend. But I appreciate everyone who tuned in. Drew, I see your Go Commanders message and you're sound asleep. Thank you to the Eagles for beating the Rams. That was awesome. And we'll see everyone back here on Monday. Take care, everybody. But we appreciate you.
Yeah. Cheers. Enjoy your weekend. Have a cold one. I know I will. And we'll see you here on Monday.
Thank you, everybody.